The morning alarm echoed through the crystal corridors of Harmony Academy, the most famous school in the galaxy. Students from hundreds of worlds hurried to their classes, their colorful skin and strange shapes making the hallways look like a living rainbow. But today was different. Today, 3 new students walked among them and everyone stared. Alex wiped sweat from his forehead as he climbed the smooth stairs. The Academy's perfect climate control felt strange after growing up with Earth's wild weather changes. Behind him, Sam carried a small bag of Earth soil, hoping to study how plants might grow in alien environments. River walked quietly, watching how different alien species moved and talked, already thinking like the sociology student she was. "There they are," whispered a tall, blue-skinned Centaurian student to her twin sister. "The Deathworld humans. They look so normal," the sister replied, her 4 arms gesturing in confusion. How did they survive on a Class 12 world? The humans had heard these whispers for weeks now. Earth was famous across the galaxy, but not in a good way. Most aliens knew it as the impossible world where nothing should live. Yet somehow billions of humans thrived there. The Galactic Council had debated for years before finally allowing humans to join their schools. Professor Quillen floated into the classroom, her gas-form body shimmering like a rainbow cloud. She was an ethereal, one of the galaxy's oldest and wisest species. Her voice came from tiny speakers around the room since she had no solid mouth to speak with. "Welcome, students, to advanced colony planning." Her voice was gentle and musical. "Today we begin your final project for this semester. You will work in teams to design a complete colony for a hostile world." The alien students leaned forward with interest. Colony planning was considered one of the most important skills in the galaxy. As civilizations grew, they needed new worlds to live on, and many of those worlds were dangerous. Your assignment is to create a sustainable colony for a Class 7 hostile environment, Professor Quillen continued. You have 8 weeks to design everything: buildings, life support, food production, social structure, and emergency systems. Raven, one of the Centaurian twins, raised 2 of her 4 hands. "Professor, what kind of Class 7 world should we prepare for?" "That's the challenge." Professor Quillen's form sparkled with amusement. "You won't know until testing day. Your colony design must be flexible enough to work on any Class 7 world, whether it's a frozen ice ball, a burning desert planet, or a world with poisonous air." The alien students began talking excitedly among themselves. This was exactly the kind of challenge they loved. A complex puzzle that required all their advanced knowledge and technology. Kai, an Andromedan student with gray skin and large black eyes, was already making notes on his data pad. His species was known for logical thinking and perfect planning. "We should research all possible Class 7 environments and create a mathematical model that covers every situation," he said to his teammates. Zara, a delicate vegan with butterfly-like wings, fluttered them thoughtfully. "But we must also consider beauty and harmony. A colony should not just survive, it should be a place where people want to live." The alien students formed their teams quickly, grouping by species or shared interests. They began discussing grand plans: massive atmospheric processors, elegant biodomes, and perfect geometric cities that would showcase their advanced civilizations. Meanwhile, the 3 humans sat together, looking at the assignment with different eyes. "Class 7 hostile," Alex muttered, running calculations in his head. "That's like, what, maybe Venus level bad? Or early Mars?" Sam nodded, thinking of Earth's most dangerous places. "Remember that documentary about the deep ocean vents? Or those bacteria that live in acid mines? Class 7 sounds like a normal Tuesday back home." River was watching the alien students with growing amazement. "Listen to them," she said quietly. "They're talking about this like it's a fun puzzle. They have no idea what hostile world really means." Professor Quillen floated over to the human team. "Alex, Sam, River, how are you approaching this challenge?" "Well," Alex said carefully, "we're thinking about what happens when things go wrong. Like, what if the main power system fails? What if there's an earthquake or a volcanic eruption?" The professor's gaseous form flickered with confusion. But surely you would design systems that don't fail. And why would you expect natural disasters? Class 7 worlds are dangerous, but they follow predictable patterns. Sam and River exchanged glances. Earth had taught them that nothing was predictable, and everything eventually failed or broke or tried to kill you. We're just being careful, Sam said diplomatically. As the days passed, the difference between human and alien approaches became more obvious. The alien team spent their time in the Academy's vast digital libraries, researching theoretical models and historical examples. They created beautiful holographic displays showing perfect colonies with clean lines and efficient systems. Raven and Nova, the Centaurian twins, worked on mathematical models that could calculate exact resource needs down to the smallest detail. If we know the atmospheric composition and temperature range, we can determine precisely how much food each colonist will need, Raven explained to anyone who would listen. Kai's team focused on automation. The key is to reduce human error, he said, designing robots and computers that could handle every aspect of colony life. Perfect systems run by perfect machines will ensure perfect results. Zara's artistic sensibilities led her to create gorgeous, architectural designs. Her colonies looked like works of art, with flowing curves and natural materials that would make colonists feel at home on even the strangest worlds. The human team worked differently. Instead of starting with theoretical models, they began with a simple question. What's the worst thing that could happen? Alex designed power systems with multiple backups, water recycling with redundant filters, and buildings that could survive earthquakes, floods, and extreme weather. His plans looked messy and complicated compared to the aliens' elegant solutions. Sam researched extremophile organisms, life forms that thrived in Earth's most hostile environments. While the aliens planned to create perfect growing conditions for normal crops, Sam was looking at bacteria that ate sulfur and plants that grew in pure acid. River studied human psychology under stress. She read about how people behaved during disasters, how societies broke down under pressure, and how to organize groups when resources were scarce. Her social planning looked paranoid compared to the aliens' assumptions of natural cooperation. The other students watched the humans work with growing puzzlement. Why were they making everything so complicated? Why plan for disasters that probably wouldn't happen? Why assume their colonists would panic and fight instead of working together peacefully? But the humans just kept working, driven by millions of years of evolution on a world that had taught them a simple lesson: hope for the best but plan for the worst. Because on Earth, the worst always happened eventually. 3 weeks into the project, the Academy's main study hall buzzed with the excited chatter of alien students showing off their work. Holographic displays filled the air above each table, showing beautiful colony designs that looked like something from a perfect future. Raven stood proudly next to her team's presentation, 4 arms gesturing at complex mathematical equations floating in the air. As you can see, our resource distribution algorithm ensures perfect efficiency, she explained to a gathering crowd. Every calorie of food, every drop of water, every breath of oxygen is calculated and distributed with zero waste. Her twin sister Nova added, "We've modeled 847 different Class 7 environments and found the mathematical constants that apply to all of them. Our colony will work perfectly on any hostile world because math doesn't lie." Students from across the galaxy nodded in admiration. The Centaurian approach was elegant and logical, exactly what everyone expected from one of the most advanced species in the known universe. At the next table, Kai's team had created something that looked like a dream of the future. Sleek robots moved through pristine corridors while automated systems managed every aspect of life. Human error is the cause of 73.6% of colony failures, Kai explained in his calm, logical voice. Remove humans from the equation, and you remove the possibility of failure. His holographic colony ran like clockwork. Machines harvested food, maintained equipment, and even handled entertainment and education. The colonists lived lives of perfect comfort while artificial intelligence managed all the dangerous or difficult work. "It's beautiful," whispered a young Arcturian student, her scales shifting colors with excitement. "Like paradise." Zara's artistic team had taken a completely different approach. Their colony looked like it had grown naturally from the ground itself, with flowing organic shapes that seemed to dance in the air. A colony must be more than just survival. Zara's musical voice carried across the hall. It must be a place where the soul can flourish, where beauty and nature exist in perfect harmony. Her designs showed gardens floating in the air, waterfalls, cascading through living buildings and structures that seemed to breathe with their own life. Even the harsh environments of Class 7 worlds looked welcoming when filtered through Zara's artistic vision. Other teams had their own impressive approaches. The Andromedans had created colonies that could adapt their shape based on environmental conditions. The Arcturians designed social structures based on pure logic and efficiency. The Vegans had planned communities where every individual's needs were perfectly balanced with the group's welfare. Every alien team had one thing in common. Their colonies were perfect, clean, and efficient. They had solved the problems of hostile world colonization through superior technology, advanced mathematics, and thousands of years of civilized development. Then, there were the humans. Their corner of the study hall looked like a disaster area compared to the neat, organized alien presentations. Papers covered in rough sketches were scattered everywhere. Alex had built actual physical models out of scrap materials, showing buildings that looked heavy and blocky next to the graceful alien designs. "Why do your structures look so thick?" asked a curious Syrian student, her tentacles waving as she examined Alex's work. Alex looked up from where he was testing how much weight his model building could handle before collapsing. "Because things break," he said simply. "Wind, earthquakes, explosions, impacts. You have to build for the worst storm that might happen, not the average day." The Syrian student looked confused. "But surely you would use weather prediction and geological surveys to avoid such problems." "What if the weather prediction is wrong?" Alex asked. "What if there's an earthquake where there's never been one before? What if something we haven't thought of happens?" The alien student's tentacles curled in distress. Planning for unknown problems seemed impossible and frightening. Sam's research area looked like a mad scientist's laboratory. She had samples of Earth organisms growing in terrible conditions, bacteria thriving in acid, fungi growing in pure darkness, plants surviving in toxic soil. While other teams planned to terraform their environments to support normal life, Sam was finding life that could survive anywhere. "These little guys," Sam said cheerfully, pointing to some green slime growing in a jar of what looked like poison, "can eat sulfur compounds and produce oxygen, and this fungus can break down almost any organic waste into nutrients." A vegan student looked horrified. "But that's so primitive. Why not simply use atmospheric processors to create perfect growing conditions?" "What if the processors break?" Sam asked. "What if they run out of power or get damaged? These organisms don't need machines, they just need to be alive." The concept of planning for technological failure was foreign to most aliens. Their societies had moved beyond such concerns millennia ago. River's work looked the strangest of all to the alien students. Instead of beautiful community plans or efficient organizational charts, she had created scenarios that seemed designed to cause problems. Her notebooks were filled with questions, like what happens when people get scared, and how do we stop fights over food? "River," Professor Quillen had floated over to examine her work. "Why are you planning for social conflict? Surely intelligent beings would cooperate for mutual survival." River looked up from a book about human behavior during disasters. "Professor, have you ever been really hungry? I mean hungry enough that you might die?" The ethereal professor's form flickered. "No, my species doesn't require physical food." "Have you ever been so scared that you couldn't think clearly? Or so tired that you made mistakes?" "We don't experience fear or fatigue in the same way." River nodded patiently. "Humans do. When we're scared or hungry or tired, we don't always make good choices. Sometimes we fight with people we care about. Sometimes we panic and do stupid things. Sometimes we give up when we should keep trying." She pointed to her plans, which included things like extra food storage, conflict resolution procedures, and rotation schedules to prevent exhaustion. "I'm not planning for bad people. I'm planning for good people having a bad day," the alien, Students found the human approach disturbing and confusing. Why make everything so complicated? Why assume things would go wrong? Why plan for the worst instead of working toward the best? As the weeks continued, the gap between human and alien approaches grew wider. The aliens refined their perfect systems, making them more elegant and efficient. Their colonies became works of art and engineering that represented the best of galactic civilization. The humans kept adding backup systems, redundant equipment, and contingency plans. Their colony designs looked crude and over-engineered, like they were expecting war instead of peaceful settlement. Other students began to whisper. Some laughed at the human approach, calling it primitive and paranoid. Others felt sorry for the humans, thinking that growing up on such a violent world had damaged their ability to imagine peaceful solutions. But a few alien students watched the humans work with growing curiosity. There was something in the way Alex tested every component until it broke, in the way Sam prepared for environmental changes that might never happen, in the way River planned for social problems that seemed unlikely. It was almost like the humans knew something the rest of them didn't. Professor Quillen observed all her students with interest. In her long life, she had seen thousands of colony designs from the galaxy's brightest minds. The alien approaches were familiar, elegant solutions that worked perfectly under ideal conditions. But the human approach was something new. They seemed to be designing not for the world they wanted, but for the world they expected. They planned not for success, but for survival. It was strange, crude, and completely unlike anything she had seen before. It was also, she realized with growing unease, probably going to work. The great testing chamber deep beneath Harmony Academy had been built by the ancient architects, a long-vanished race whose technology still amazed the galaxy. The massive sphere could recreate any known environment with perfect accuracy, down to the chemical composition of alien soils and the exact radiation signatures of distant stars. Professor Quillen floated at the chamber's control center, her ethereal form shimmering with anticipation. Around the observation deck, students from dozens of worlds pressed against the transparent barriers, eager to see whose colony design would prove superior. The simulation chamber will now randomly select a Class 7 hostile world from our database, the professor announced, her voice echoing through the vast space. Remember, this is not just a test of engineering. It's a test of understanding what life requires to survive in dangerous places. The chamber's walls came alive with swirling energy as ancient machines reached across the galaxy to scan a real world. Data flowed across holographic displays faster than most minds could follow. Atmospheric readings, geological surveys, radiation, levels and climate patterns all fed into the simulation. Raven and Nova stood confidently with their team, watching the data stream with calm satisfaction. Look at those numbers, Raven murmured to her sister. Volcanic activity index of 7.3, atmospheric sulfur content at 12%, temperature variations of 200 degrees. It's all within our calculated parameters. Nova nodded, her forearms crossed, in satisfaction. Our mathematical model predicted exactly this kind of world. The resource distribution algorithms will handle these conditions perfectly. At another viewing station, Kai's dark eyes reflected the dancing lights of the display screens. His automated colony design hummed quietly in the simulation buffer, all systems optimized for maximum efficiency. The machines will adapt to these conditions within the first few days, he said confidently. Automated systems don't panic or make emotional decisions. Zara watched the environmental data with artistic appreciation, her delicate wings fluttering gently. Even such a harsh world has its own beauty, she whispered. My designs will help the colonists see the wonder in this place, not just the danger. But in the human section, the mood was different. Alex stared at the readouts with a growing frown, his hands clenched into fists. Sam bit her lip as she watched the geological data, while River took notes on what the environmental stress might do to human psychology. That's not a Class 7 world, Alex said quietly. Look at the seismic activity readings. Look at those volcanic eruption patterns. Sam nodded grimly. The atmospheric composition keeps changing too. Those aren't stable conditions. That world is actively trying to kill anything that lives on it. River was already making calculations. The psychological stress index for constant environmental threat is going to be enormous. People won't just be surviving. They'll be living in constant fear. A Centaurian student overheard them and laughed. You humans always expect the worst. The database clearly shows this as a Class 7 world. Our civilizations have been categorizing planets for thousands of years. We know what we're doing. Alex started to respond, then stopped. There was no point in arguing. Soon enough, everyone would see the difference between theoretical knowledge and hard experience. Professor Quillen's voice filled the chamber again. The selected world is Crucible 9, a volcanic planet in the Scorpius sector. High seismic activity, toxic atmosphere, extreme temperature fluctuations, and frequent meteor impacts due to its position near an asteroid belt. All colony simulations will now begin. The chamber walls became transparent, revealing a hellish landscape that made several alien students gasp in shock. Molten lava rivers cut across black volcanic plains, while toxic yellow clouds swirled through an orange sky. Lightning crackled constantly through the poisonous atmosphere, and in the distance a massive volcano spewed fire and ash into the air. It's worse than the readings suggested, whispered an Arcturian student, her scales turning pale with fear. The simulations began simultaneously. Each team's colony design materialized on the hostile surface, populated with virtual colonists, programmed to behave like real people from their respective species. Time accelerated, allowing years of colony development to unfold in hours. The alien colonies started impressively. Raven and Nova's mathematically perfect settlement deployed, exactly as planned. Atmospheric processors came online, resource distribution systems activated, and the colonists began their carefully calculated routines. Kai's automated paradise was a wonder to behold. Robots immediately began constructing shelters while artificial intelligence systems analyzed the environment and made adjustments. The human colonists lived in perfect comfort, while machines handled all interaction with the hostile world. Zara's organic architecture seemed to bloom from the ground itself, creating beautiful spaces that made even this hellish world look welcoming. Her colonists moved through flowing corridors and tended gardens that somehow thrived, despite the toxic air outside. The human colony looked crude and primitive by comparison. Thick-walled bunkers squatted on the landscape like metal toads. The colonists worked constantly, maintaining equipment, checking systems, and preparing for problems that hadn't happened yet. For the first simulated months, everything seemed to be going according to plan. Then Crucible 9 reminded everyone why it was called a hostile world. The first disaster came without warning. A massive earthquake, magnitude 8.9, shattered the ground across half the continent. The elegant spires of Zara's beautiful colony cracked and fell, crushing virtual colonists beneath artistic rubble. The mathematical precision of the Centaurian resource network was disrupted when key facilities were destroyed, leaving entire sections without power or water. "This is outside normal parameters," Nova said, her voice tight with stress. "Earthquakes of this magnitude weren't in the geological survey data." Professor Quillen's form flickered with concern. The survey was accurate for normal conditions, but Crucible 9 is experiencing unusual seismic activity due to a rare planetary alignment that occurs every few centuries. The alien students watched in growing horror as their perfect colonies began to fail. Kai's automated systems tried to compensate, but when half the robots were destroyed by falling debris, the remaining machines couldn't handle the workload. Critical systems began failing as virtual colonists demanded help that artificial intelligence couldn't provide. "The humans should be failing too," muttered a vegan student. But when they looked at the human colony, they saw something impossible. The thick walls of Alex's bunker buildings had cracked, but hadn't collapsed. Emergency systems activated automatically, providing backup power when the main grid failed. The colonists moved through pre-planned evacuation procedures, securing essential equipment and helping injured neighbors. "How are they surviving this?" asked a bewildered Arcturian student. "Look at their resource storage," River pointed out. "They have 3 months of emergency supplies already stockpiled. And see those shelter areas? They're designed for exactly this kind of disaster. But the earthquake was only the beginning. As the simulation continued, Crucible 9 revealed why it was one of the galaxy's most dangerous worlds. Volcanic eruptions filled the air with toxic ash. Acid rain corroded equipment. Meteor impacts from the nearby asteroid belt struck without warning. The temperature swung from freezing to boiling as the planet's unstable core affected its weather patterns. One by one, the alien colonies succumbed to disasters they hadn't prepared for. Beautiful buildings became death traps. Perfect systems failed when damaged. Elegant resource networks collapsed when key components were destroyed. The virtual alien colonists, programmed to behave like their real species, struggled to cope with the constant stress. Many became paralyzed by fear, unable to function in an environment where death could come at any moment. Others made panicked decisions that made situations worse. But the human colonists seemed almost comfortable with the chaos. When disaster struck, they fell back on backup plans. When equipment failed, they repaired it or found alternatives. When people panicked, social support systems helped them recover and keep working. It's like they expected this, Professor, Quillen said quietly, watching the human colony not just survive but actually expand despite the hellish conditions. As the simulation entered its second year, only one colony remained fully operational. The others had either failed completely or were barely hanging on with tiny populations of survivors. The humans had won, but as Alex watched their virtual colonists calmly dealing with yet another volcanic eruption, he didn't feel victorious. He felt homesick. The observation deck fell silent as the third year of simulation began on Crucible 9. What had started as a test of colony design had become something far more sobering, a demonstration of how quickly civilization could crumble when faced with a truly hostile environment. Raven stared at the ruins of what had once been her mathematically perfect colony. The elegant resource distribution network lay in shambles, destroyed by a series of disasters that her equations had deemed statistically impossible. Her virtual, Centaurian colonists huddled in the few remaining intact buildings, slowly starving as their carefully calculated food supplies ran out. The volcanic eruption in Sector 7 disrupted the entire logistics chain, she said, her forearms trembling slightly. When the central processing facility was destroyed, the automated food distribution stopped working. We never planned for manual backup systems. Her twin sister Nova watched their virtual people dying with growing horror. The mathematics were perfect, she whispered. Every calculation was verified and double-checked. How could perfect math fail? Professor Quillen's ethereal form drifted closer to the Centaurian twins. Your math was perfect for the conditions you expected, she said gently. But mathematics cannot account for events outside its parameters. At the next viewing station, Kai's dark eyes reflected the burning landscape where his automated paradise had once stood. The beautiful machines that were supposed to handle every aspect of colony life lay scattered and broken across the volcanic plains. His virtual human colonists wandered among the wreckage, completely helpless without the artificial intelligence that had managed their lives. The central AI core was destroyed in the meteor impact, Kai said, his logical voice cracking slightly. The backup systems couldn't handle the complexity of colony management. The colonists. They don't know how to do anything for themselves. A young Andromedan student pressed against the barrier, watching the virtual humans stumble through simple tasks like finding food or treating injuries. Why don't they know these basic skills? Because the AI was supposed to handle everything, Kai replied. Perfect systems eliminate the need for human knowledge, except when the systems fail. Zara's beautiful organic colony had perhaps suffered the most tragic fate. Her flowing artistic structures had been designed to work in harmony with natural forces. But Crucible 9's natural forces included acid rain, toxic gas clouds, and ground that regularly split open to reveal molten lava beneath. Her graceful buildings had dissolved in the acid, and her carefully planned gardens had withered in the poisonous atmosphere. Beauty alone is not enough, she said sadly, her butterfly wings drooping. I created a paradise, but paradise cannot exist in hell. Her virtual vegan colonists, bred for thousands of generations on peaceful worlds, simply could not cope with the constant threat of death. Many had retreated into catatonic states, unable to function when their beautiful environment became a death trap. Others had suffered complete mental breakdowns, their delicate psychologies shattered by the daily stress of survival. One by one, the other alien colonies had met similar fates. The Arcturians' logic-based society had collapsed when logical responses proved inadequate for chaotic situations. The Andromedans' adaptive structures had adapted themselves into uselessness, changing so frequently that the colonists could never establish stable routines. Every alien team had made the same fundamental error. They had designed for the world they understood, not for the world they were given. Meanwhile, the human colony continued to thrive in ways that baffled the alien observers. "Look at them," said an ethereal student, pointing at the human settlement with confusion. "They're actually expanding. In this hellish environment, they're growing stronger." The human colony had started as a collection of ugly, bunker-like buildings that looked more like military fortifications than civilian housing. But as the years passed, those crude structures had proven their worth. When earthquakes struck, the thick walls cracked but didn't collapse. When volcanic ash filled the air, sealed filtration systems kept the interiors clean. When acid rain ate through equipment, backup systems automatically took over. More importantly, the human colonists themselves seemed almost comfortable with the constant danger. When disasters struck, they didn't panic or freeze. They followed well-rehearsed emergency procedures. When equipment failed, they repaired it themselves instead of waiting for machines to fix it. When people were injured or killed, the survivors grieved briefly and then got back to the work of staying alive. "It's not natural," muttered a Syrian student, her tentacles writhing with distress. "No intelligent species should be comfortable with such chaos and death." But Alex watched their virtual humans with a mixture of pride and sadness. "This isn't chaos to them," he said quietly. "This is just Tuesday." Sam nodded, pointing at the agricultural sections where her engineered organisms continued to thrive despite the toxic environment. "See those bacteria converting the sulfur compounds into oxygen? And that fungus breaking down volcanic ash into fertilizer? They're not fighting the environment, they're working with it." The alien students stared in amazement as the human agricultural systems not only survived, but actually benefited from conditions that had destroyed every other colony's food production. Plants that could eat poison, bacteria that thrived in acid, fungi that grew stronger in toxic soil. The humans had brought life forms that treated deadly environments as comfortable homes. River's social planning had proven equally resilient. While the virtual alien colonists had succumbed to panic, despair, or mental breakdown, the humans had maintained stable social structures even under extreme stress. Her carefully planned support systems helped people cope with trauma. Her resource distribution prevented fights over food, and her rotation schedules ensured that no one person had to bear too much psychological pressure for too long. "How did you know?" asked a bewildered vegan student. "How did you plan for problems that we never even imagined?" River looked at the question with some confusion. "We didn't plan for specific problems," she said. "We planned for the fact that problems would happen. On Earth, something is always trying to kill you. Ice ages, volcanic eruptions, asteroid impacts, plagues, famines, wars. It never stops. You learn to expect the worst and prepare for things you can't even imagine." Professor Quillen had been studying the human colony with growing fascination. Their success wasn't due to superior technology or advanced mathematics. If anything, their equipment was cruder, and their methods more primitive than the alien designs. But where the alien colonies had been optimized for perfect conditions, the human colony had been designed for terrible ones. Where the aliens had created systems that worked flawlessly until they broke, the humans had built systems that kept working even when half destroyed. Where the aliens had assumed cooperation and logic, the humans had planned for fear and mistakes. "Your species designs for failure," the professor said to the 3 human students. "That's unprecedented in galactic civilization." Alex shrugged, still watching their virtual colonists calmly dealing with yet another disaster. "On Earth, If you don't plan for failure, you die. It's that simple. Everything breaks eventually. Everyone makes mistakes. Bad things happen to good people. You either accept that and prepare for it, or you become extinct. The simulation was nearing its end, but the final lesson came in the most unexpected way. A massive solar flare from Crucible 9's unstable sun sent electromagnetic pulses racing across the planet's surface, frying electronic equipment for hundreds of miles. The few remaining alien colonies, which had been barely surviving on their last functional systems, went completely dark. Their final hopes died with their technology, but in the human settlement, life continued almost normally. Manual backup systems activated, mechanical equipment kept running, and the colonists switched to procedures that required no electronics at all. They had planned for the day when all technology would fail, and they were ready. As the simulation ended and the chamber walls returned to their normal opacity, the alien students stood in stunned silence. Their perfect theories had crumbled against harsh reality, while the crude human approach had not only survived but triumphed. "I don't understand," whispered Nova, her mathematical mind struggling to process what she had witnessed. "How can primitive methods work better than advanced science?" Sam answered with a sad smile. "They're not primitive methods. They're Deathworld methods. There's a difference." The alien students began to realize that they had been viewing the challenge through the lens of their own peaceful, stable civilizations. They had designed colonies for the kind of worlds they knew, places where disasters were rare, where technology was reliable, where people could count on systems working as intended. But the humans had designed for Earth, a world where disasters were common, where technology failed regularly, where people had to be ready for anything because anything could happen. For the first time in their academic careers, the galaxy's brightest students began to understand that sometimes the best education came not from the most advanced worlds, but from the most dangerous ones. The great testing chamber powered down with a deep, resonant hum that seemed to echo through the bones of every student present. As the ancient machine settled into silence, Professor Quillen's ethereal form drifted to the center of the observation deck where hundreds of young minds from across the galaxy waited for an explanation that would make sense of what they had just witnessed. "Would the human team please explain their approach?" the professor asked, her voice carrying a mixture of curiosity and something that might have been respect. Alex, Sam, and River exchanged glances before stepping forward. Around them, alien students pressed closer, their expressions ranging from confusion to amazement to something approaching fear. Alex cleared his throat nervously. Speaking to an audience of the galaxy's academic elite felt more intimidating than designing a colony for a hellish volcanic world. "Well," he began, "I guess the main thing is that we designed for Earth-normal conditions." A ripple of confused murmurs ran through the alien students. A young Arcturian raised her hand, scales shifting to a puzzled blue color. "But Earth is a Class 12 death world. Crucible 9 was only Class 7. Surely Earth-normal conditions would be even more extreme." Sam stepped forward with a gentle smile. "That's exactly the point. Earth isn't just hostile, it's actively trying to kill everything that lives on it. Always has been. Class 7 worlds like Crucible 9 are dangerous, but they're stable in their danger. You can predict volcanic eruptions, plan for earthquakes, prepare for toxic atmosphere." She gestured toward the now dark simulation chamber. "Earth doesn't give you that luxury. Ice ages come without warning and last for thousands of years. Asteroid impacts happen randomly. Volcanic eruptions can change the entire planet's climate overnight. Diseases evolve faster than we can cure them. The magnetic field flips and exposes everything to deadly radiation. The continents themselves move around and crash into each other." River nodded, adding, "And that's just the natural disasters. Humans also have to deal with each other. Wars, famines, economic collapses, social upheavals. We've learned to expect that everything we build will eventually be destroyed, and everyone we trust will eventually let us down, or die, or both." The alien students listened with growing horror. Several vegan students had turned pale green, their delicate sensibilities overwhelmed by the casual way the humans described constant catastrophe. Professor Quillen's form flickered with interest. So your species developed under conditions of perpetual crisis? Pretty much, Alex confirmed. Every human engineering principle assumes that things will break at the worst possible moment. We don't build bridges to handle normal traffic. We build them to survive earthquakes, hurricanes, and wars. We don't design power grids for average demand. We design them to work when half the system is destroyed. A Centaurian student raised 2 of her 4 hands. But that seems incredibly wasteful. Why not simply build systems that don't fail in the first place? The 3 humans looked at her with expressions of gentle pity, like adults explaining death to a child. Because everything fails eventually, Sam said softly. Everything breaks. Everyone dies. Every civilization falls. The only question is when, not if. She pulled up a holographic display showing Earth's history. Look at our planet's timeline. 5 major extinction events that killed most life on Earth. Hundreds of smaller disasters. Ice ages, volcanic catastrophes, asteroid impacts, gamma-ray bursts from dying stars. Any one of these events would have wiped out most species in the galaxy. The display showed Earth's dramatic climate changes, massive geological upheavals, and the rise and fall of countless species over billions of years. But life on Earth didn't just survive, it got stronger. Every disaster that should have killed everything instead taught the survivors new ways to live. River continued the explanation. Human societies work the same way. We've had our civilizations destroyed so many times that we've learned to build them to survive destruction. When our cities are burned down, we rebuild them better. When our governments collapse, we create new ones. When our technologies fail, we develop new ones. She pointed to her social planning work. That's why I plan for people to panic and fight and make bad decisions. Not because humans are bad people, but because we know that stress makes everyone stupid sometimes. On Earth, if your social structure can't handle people being afraid and hungry and desperate, then it's not a social structure. It's just a pretty theory waiting to collapse. Kai, whose automated colony had failed so spectacularly, spoke up. With quiet confusion. But surely advanced technology can eliminate these problems. Perfect systems run by artificial intelligence should be superior to human judgment. Alex shook his head. We tried that too, many times. But what happens when the AI gets damaged? What happens when it encounters a situation it wasn't programmed for? What happens when the power goes out? He gestured toward the simulation chamber. Your colony failed because your people didn't know how to do anything themselves. They were completely dependent on machines to think for them. When the machines broke, they were helpless. Human technology is different, Sam added. We design it to work with humans, not instead of humans. Our tools make us stronger and smarter, but they don't replace our ability to think and act for ourselves. When our machines break, we fix them. When our computers fail, we fall back on manual procedures. When our automatic systems stop working, we do the work ourselves. Professor Quillen drifted closer to the human students. Your species has experienced what we call evolutionary pressure, far beyond anything else in the known galaxy. Most worlds that produce intelligent life become stable and peaceful once that intelligence reaches a certain level. But Earth remained hostile even as humans developed advanced civilization. That's right, River confirmed. Other species got to graduate from survival mode. They developed art, philosophy, mathematics, and technology in peaceful environments where they could focus on perfection and beauty and theoretical problems. She gestured around at the alien students. You've all had thousands of years to create perfect societies. You've eliminated war, poverty, disease, and most forms of suffering. Your worlds are garden paradises where the biggest problems are academic challenges and artistic disputes. But humans never got that luxury, Alex continued. We had to develop art and philosophy and mathematics, while also dealing with plagues and wars and natural disasters. We had to create beautiful things while also preparing for them to be destroyed. We had to build perfect systems while also planning for them to fail. The alien students began to understand the fundamental difference. Their civilizations had been shaped by success and stability. They had learned to create perfect solutions for predictable problems. Human civilization had been shaped by failure and chaos. They had learned to create workable solutions for unpredictable problems. So when we designed our colony, Sam explained, we weren't trying to create something perfect. We were trying to create something that would keep working even when everything went wrong. A young ethereal student's gaseous form shimmered with curiosity. But how do you live with such constant uncertainty? How do you find meaning in a universe where everything you build will eventually be destroyed? River smiled, and for the first time since the simulation began, it was a genuinely happy expression. That's the beautiful part. When you know that everything is temporary, you learn to appreciate what you have while you have it. When you know that disasters will come, you learn to help each other through them. When you know that you might die tomorrow, you learn to make today matter. Earth taught us something that stable worlds can't, Alex added. It taught us that the meaning of life isn't to build things that last forever. It's to build things worth rebuilding when they fall down. Professor Quillen's form had been growing brighter throughout the explanation, a sign of deep thought among her species. This has significant implications for galactic colonization efforts, she said slowly. We have been attempting to terraform hostile worlds to match the conditions of our peaceful homeworlds. But perhaps we should be asking Deathworld species to help us adapt to hostile conditions instead. The idea sent shockwaves through the assembled students. The galaxy's most advanced civilizations, asking primitive humans for help? It seemed impossible. But as they looked at the simulation results, the evidence was undeniable. When faced with a truly hostile environment, all their advanced knowledge and perfect theories had failed. Only the crude, practical approach of the Deathworld humans had succeeded. Over the following days, word of the humans' victory spread throughout Harmony Academy. Students who had initially pitied or mocked the primitive Earthlings began approaching them with new respect and curiosity. More importantly, requests began coming in from across the galaxy. Planetary development committees wanted human consultants. Terraforming projects requested human engineers. Colony planners asked for human social designers. The three human students found themselves at the center of a revolution in galactic thinking. For millennia, intelligent species had assumed that advancement meant moving away from the harsh realities of survival. They had seen their peaceful, stable civilizations as the pinnacle of evolutionary achievement. But Earth had taught a different lesson. Sometimes advancement meant becoming better at survival, not eliminating the need for it. 6 months later, Professor Quillen announced a new addition to Harmony Academy's curriculum: Deathworld Survival. Engineering, to be taught by human instructors. The course would cover practical engineering for hostile environments, social planning under extreme stress, and resource management during catastrophic failures. The waiting list for enrollment stretched across 3 star systems. As Alex looked out at his first class of eager alien students, he thought about Earth. That impossible, beautiful, terrible world that had shaped his species into something unique in the galaxy. For the first time since leaving home, he felt proud of humanity's harsh heritage. "Welcome to Survival Engineering 101, he said to the packed lecture hall. "The first thing you need to understand is that everything you've learned about perfect systems is wrong. Today we're going to learn how to build things that work when nothing works, plan for disasters you can't imagine, and find hope in the darkest times." In the front row, Raven and Nova took careful notes, their mathematical minds already working to understand this new paradigm. Behind them, Kai prepared to learn how humans had achieved what his perfect machines could not. Zara sketched designs for beautiful structures that could survive ugly realities. And in the back of the room, Professor Quillen's ethereal form glowed with satisfaction. Her students were finally learning the most important lesson in the galaxy: that sometimes the best teachers come not from the most advanced worlds, but from the most dangerous ones. The humans had won more than a class assignment. They had shown the galaxy that survival wasn't something to be ashamed of or left behind. It was something to be proud of and shared with others. After all, in a universe full of hostile worlds and unpredictable dangers, everyone could use a little Deathworld wisdom.